So I can't remember what episode this is now. I think this is episode 7, but I'm really happy to be here on another episode of Muddafork with Jasper Ward. Kyle Walkine is also supposed to be here, but as celebrities are, he's trying to be fashionably late.
Crazy.
Jasper, what's happening?
Absolutely nothing. I got sky juice, so all is good in the world.
Big things are going on. How have you been managing in your quarantine? I was really relieved to hear that you tested negative. I think you had the whole country. You had the whole country just like, oh no.
I had my boss like, oh no, because I mean, last week my coworker. So the newsroom, the Guardian's national team, there's 3 reporters. We have editors who obviously chip in, but there's 3 reporters, and Rachel was on vacation all last week, and on Saturday I woke up with a sore throat. I started having really bad headaches and stuff like that from like Sunday. I had a bit of loss of taste, and I was like freaking out. I was like, I'm like, I haven't been around, I like left the house once to go to the grocery store and to, go donate some blood. And I called my boss on Monday. I was like, hey, Candia. She's like, hey, Jasper. I'm like, so I think I got some COVID symptoms. And she was like, huh? It was a very unpleasant thing. And I got a call that alerted me that I had been exposed to somebody at COVID on, I think, that Friday. So I got the call on Tuesday. And so self-quarantine sucks because I like to stretch my legs, but I can't leave the confines.
What have you been doing besides writing awesome stories? What have you been doing to pass the time?
I've started watching this show called Shameless, so I'm addicted to it now. So I plan on finishing all 10 seasons before next week Friday. I'm on season 4.
All right, well, stellar. I've heard of it. I can't say that I've ever watched it. I mean, what's the plot? Is it good?
It's really good. I think they try to make it a drama, but it's like real dark comedy type thing, and it's really good. It's addicting. If you like dysfunctional families, you love it.
I may have a thing for that, but that's a different conversation for a different day. So I don't know where to begin. I kind of want to talk about Hurricane Dorian, but I also want to talk about COVID. So I think we should go back in time. Let's start with Dorian. Talk to me about that experience from the journalist standpoint, and give us the Jasper personal experience. What was that like?
So for Dorian, I was obviously writing for the greatest news organization in the country, the Nassau Guardian. Duh.
Shameless.
I mean, and I was also a freelance reporter for the Washington Post and a freelance producer for ABC. So I didn't sleep for like about a week and a half during Dorian because, when I wasn't pushing through like 3 or 4 stories a day for the Guardian, I was pushing through another 2 stories for the Post. And, with the ABC team on the ground, just arranging interviews and different stuff with, people in Abaco, Grand Bahama, and cabinet ministers. So I didn't sleep. I was an emotional wreck the entire time. I was telling you before we started the recording that one of the most traumatic experiences of my time as a journalist was I was interviewing this lady. She had a video that gone viral of her holding her newborn son. And she's like standing on a balcony in the middle of Dorian, and you're looking out and you can tell she's like on the 2nd or 3rd floor. And you look out and there's water that's almost as high as where she's at. It's like covering buildings and trees in the area. And she's screaming and asking for help. And so my boss is like, we need that story for the paper. So, you start reaching out to contacts and trying to source the video. And we got in contact with her. And so I'm interviewing her and she's telling me she made it to safety in a nearby building. There's like 40 or 60 people in this like small 2-bedroom place. And they're like 10. Did she
describe how she got to the nearby building?
She said that there was a guy, she couldn't swim. So she said there was a guy nearby who put her baby in like a container and floated him across, and then came back and kind of helped her across. And, as I'm interviewing her, she's like, the roof is coming off. I can see the sky. And, she starts screaming. Other people start screaming. There's just like this chaos, all you can hear. And, I'm in my very safe newsroom in Nassau with my boss and my coworkers. And so she's screaming. And next thing I know, the line cuts. And she's like, oh my God, line cuts. And at this point, I hadn't even reached 1 year in news, so I'm not like emotionally prepared for this.
Oh,
And so
wow. You were fresh out of the gates at this point.
out of the gates of grad school. And so, I basically fall onto my boss. I'm crying because I'm like, she's dead. And Candia's like, she's not dead. And I'm like, she's dead. And I'm like bawling my tears out, my eyes out. And she's like, we'll try calling her. And, we call once, we call twice, 3, 4 times, nothing. And about 30 minutes later, we finally connected her. And she was saying how they had to flee that building to go to another one. And I just remembered that being one of the most traumatic experiences. So then getting on the ground in Abaco, like, I think that Thursday, fresh after the storm, and, kind of seeing the devastation, seeing, bodies crushed under things and, the looting and stuff. And terrible experience in my heart. Every month coming close to Dorian, I always do a post to remind people of the destruction there, because I'm like, there are other things happening in the country, but thousands of people in the Bahamas survived this monster storm, and we can never let that be forgotten. It's a big part of who we are as a country now. So,
do you think that the coverage of Dorian gave the situation justice, or did the situation justice?
I feel like the local coverage was extraordinary. The Tribune, ZNS, especially ZNS North, The Guardian, Eyewitness, all together came and they told the story as fully and completely as they possibly could for like the week of the storm, the weeks after the storm, like we told the complete story. So I was very proud of our press corps about that. I had issues about international coverage of it. You'd turn on your television and you'd hear the headlines, "The Bahamas destroyed by monster storm." And I'm like, yo,
sensationalist, yeah.
No, we're not destroyed. Don't say that. And they're quoting like Bahamas Press and other places that aren't really sourcing their information, and they're kind of sending out a lot of false information about the storm. And so I wasn't really as pleased as I would have liked to have been about, the international coverage. It brought a bit of happiness to me when I saw like other reporters like Theo and Matthew from Eyewitness, and my colleague from The Guardian, Rachel, so Theo and Matthew were doing for CNN, and Rachel was doing for New York Times. So it made me a bit happier to see like we had actual Bahamian journalists helping to get the narrative right for that international audience.
Yeah. I remember there came a point in time when I distinctly recall I said to myself, I'm not going to watch any of this BS on CNN or any of the international news stations. And then when I heard that Bahamians were involved in what they were now reporting, that actually had a big impact on the narrative, because it became less of, oh my God, country wiped out by monster storm that was sent from, the pits of hell, or however you want to spin it, to islands devastated by storm, but we will be back. I think you guys in particular, with The Guardian, if I may say, did a really good job of carrying not only the live action events that were taking place, but also in terms of, I guess, giving us a bit of the sense of resilience of people that were in Hurricane Dorian. And in that vein, I wanted to, I suppose, ask like, what, the story with the lady and the baby is very touching. What other sort of deep stories that show, Bahamians, we are survivors, did you happen to cover?
I mean, there were so many. Rachel wrote this. I mean, even afterwards, I'll send you the link. But she wrote this brilliant story for the New York Times about this man who was blind. And, he's dealing with Dorian, and he had a disabled son, and he carried his disabled son to safety, in the middle of the storm. And, when you read a story like that, you're just like, whoa, that's literally going against all odds. We did stories of these men who went out on jet skis, and they're telling how, they came about getting on a jet ski, knowing they may die, and still going to rescue dozens of people. I did a story about this, and I'm sorry if I can't remember anybody's name, but about this one lady. She called into The Guardian, and she told one of the producers for Guardian Radio that she was trapped in her attic. And this is when Dorian was sitting over Grand Bahama, and we interviewed her for the papers. And she was literally in her attic saying to us, if we don't survive, we would at least like the story to get out there. And, you know, when somebody's telling you, if I don't survive, still write the story, you're just like, should I maybe not write the story and try to get you out?
That's heavy. Wow.
So those were like some of the key stories that stand. And obviously when you get on the ground, you know, there are different stories that kind of that emerge. You know, we spoke to a lady when we arrived in Abaco and Marsh Harbor that Thursday, who was 76 years old. And she walked from one town to another town that was like 12 miles away in the middle of Dorian by herself. You know, a few weeks later, I interviewed a guy from Foxtown who was on his boat when Dorian came. His boat capsized, and he literally had to swim miles in the middle of the storm to safety, you know. And that's why I think like Dorian's something we can never like try to minimize the impact of it. We can never like try to say, you know, that was a year ago, you know, we had new things to worry about, because I mean, the stories that came out of it, the impact it had on so many lives, it's just nothing that we will really be able to comprehend as people who didn't experience it.
Did you feel the sense of, I mean, the effect rather of the trauma of Dorian with the passage of the most recent hurricane, Isaias? What's the correct pronunciation for this damn storm?
I don't know. I think for me, I'm the kind of person, I will know how something is pronounced. And then if someone says it incorrectly, I'm like, I don't know. I think they're both right. So
so let's just go with that.
Hurricane Izzy. How about that?
Okay, Hurricane Izzy. Boom.
I was a bit anxious about it. You know, I had this surreal moment when they had the NEMA press conference the Thursday before the storm was supposed to come. And it kind of reminded me of last year with Dorian, kind of sitting at NEMA and watching the prime minister come to the podium and sending out that warning to not be a hero and to, you know, listen to the officials and to try to be safe. So there was a bit of anxiety, I feel. And I think if another storm comes anytime this season, I think the anxiety will still be there just because, you know, Dorian.
Yeah. I mean, someone tweeted this the other day. The handle escapes me, but I'm pretty sure she's a meteorologist of some description. And she was saying that one of the things that she hopes doesn't happen is that people look at the storm that just passed and take for granted that happened and forget. Do you think? Because I mean, Bahamians, we're quick to forget things now. Like we'll come to how that applies in the political context later. But do you think Bahamians are ever going to forget that?
I don't think so. At least not in this generation, you know, because I mean, we witnessed firsthand the horror of Dorian, you know. Even if we did not know a relative or friend, we all knew somebody who was impacted by Dorian. So I think even though the last storm wasn't as bad as we may have expected, I don't think that's going to change kind of the fear that's going to come whenever we hear a category 1, category 2, category anything is coming our way.
Yeah, seriously. I mean, I guess I'm always trying to find a silver lining. I guess one of them is that, you know, the impact of Dorian sort of made us more conscious of the fact that, one, when hurricanes come, no man is an island, like pun intended. We all really have to be sort of in that together. And two, don't take any storm for a joke. I think that's the greatest takeaway, you know. Category 1, category half, tropical storm, I don't care. I think it's one of the things everyone should just take seriously.
No, absolutely.
So I just got a text from who's supposed to be our other participant. Apparently my guy was taking a nap, so he will be along. He'll be along shortly. But all good. So we can keep going. How have you found? I'll tackle this another way. Let's talk COVID. Let us talk COVID. Take a big sip.
Okay.
Do you think, if you can answer this with no conflict, you have the same privy to the emergency orders that everybody else does, but I'm assuming you would have read them, unlike everyone else. Do you think that what the government is doing is fair?
Well, I try to stay away from these political questions, you know.
I know, and I meant to sort of put that out there. So to clarify, I'm not asking if you think that what is happening, you know, is right or wrong, but is it the best way that it could be handled?
So I understand that the health officials, they think that this is the best way to tackle the problem that we have. I understand that the Prime Minister is acting on the advice of the health officials.
Look who showed up.
Kyle finally came?
Kyle Walkine has joined the chat.
Chocolate Thunder, is that you?
That's me. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Nick said 2 o'clock.
I don't remember telling you 2 o'clock. Did I say 2 o'clock?
And then I set my alarm for 1:30.
No worries, no worries. We were sure you were getting dolled up and putting on a suit for the occasion.
Are we on now already?
Yeah.
Oh man, I'm so sorry.
Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. That's the beauty of doing things when you're chill, man. What's happening?
So, hey Jasper, how much did I miss anyway?
We talked about Hurricane Dorian. I mean, I'm happy to go back there if you want to lend your perspective. I mean, you were there, so it'd probably be good if you did. Jasper was discussing some of the more, I guess, heartfelt stories of people and them being able to survive the storm. The lady who had to have a baby, floated across to safety by somebody who's ostensibly a stranger, who had to come back and rescue her. The reliance of us on each other as a people to help each other. I mean, what was your experience from Dorian? Because you were more in the hot spot than anything else.
With Dorian, it was different for me because as a reporter, we tend to, Jasper can attest to this too, we tend to go, especially on a family island, after the storm. But we did something different where they sent me there, I think, a few days prior to, and I got to get the storm prep and all of that. And it was different because, they say you've never endured a hurricane until you've endured it in Grand Bahama. And so it was kind of an adventure for me when I got started. Got people going to water depots, getting sandbags, and they weren't taking this thing lightly at all. I remember coming towards the end when they made that final plea for people to evacuate. And they called areas in East Grand Bahama in particular. And there's a place, there's a corner there that has a sign, and it has just about every settlement and the direction they're in. And I remember reading the list that Peter Turnquist and Kwesi Thompson called off, and every last one was on that list there in that area. And I was saying, basically, all of you all have to leave, like go further inland or whatever. And then the storm came. From where I was in Kyle Bahamas' building in the city, and I was fine. It was a 3-story building.
For reference, where's Cable Bahamas' building, for those who don't know how Freeport's laid out?
That's more so in Freeport, the actual city. That's where the businesses are, like Kalina and the Office of the Prime Minister, all of that. That's strip of business there. And so that's where I was, and I was pretty safe. And then I heard that water was coming up to where we were. And I said, whoa. And then someone said, yeah, if water's coming up here, that means it's flooded like just about everywhere else. And I remember the water meeting to the middle of the road where we were. And that's when I got kind of concerned. I'm like, okay, so it's going to happen to us. And somehow water got in the building, somehow or the other, where we were, because we had air beds. And I remember coming out of my airbed and stepping in a little puddle of water. I said, whoa, what's going on here? And that's when we started to hear horror stories from people. I remember I woke up and there was these 2 boys in there, 2 little boys in there, and they were playing their game. One of our employees had a game there, a game console, and they were playing that. And I remember one had on a singlet, and he was like cold. He was like a little shivering. And so I said, hey bro, where's your shirt? And he said, we don't have no shirt. Like, we just had to leave our house just like that, and like, because the water came in, and so we didn't have time to take anything. And that's when I realized, okay, this was a situation that we were in, that these people were evacuating in the middle of the storm. And so I gave him my shirt, and then I realized his brother didn't have one either. Gave him another shirt, gave him my blanket, and then I got out as the storm was leaving, and I got to see for myself the devastation. Like, you had people wading through water with suitcases on their head. Like, there was this woman who called, and she had her kids on top of a car and she needed help. it was a situation I'd never ever forget. And I just remember throughout the, you saying something?
I was just about to ask a question. Do you think that, I mean, and this is for both of you, but do you think that any amount of preparedness could have made anybody more ready for the impact of that storm?
And that's my thing, because you hear people say, "Oh, people should have evacuated." Places where people were not asked to evacuate, they were flooded as well. They got heavy brunt of that storm surge, and it was just a weird experience, and it was rather unfortunate. This was something I didn't realize until I think about 2 weeks later. Before the storm, my cameraman TJ and I were in High Rock. They got done horribly. I was shooting what you call a stand-up. That's where you see me on camera. I was by the seawall, and you can see a community behind me. And there was, I get chills talking about this right now, sorry. There was a car pulled up, and this family, it was 2 women and a little boy. They were taking groceries in the house. This was before the storm. After the storm, the house is no more. Since then, no one has been able to hear from those people. No one. We didn't realize that it was them who was in I still have the footage, but I don't show it to anybody. I don't see it. Anything out of respect.
Understandably so.
Yeah, it's just,
you don't know what happened to them. Yeah, Jesus Christ.
The unpredictability of the job. I didn't find this out until weeks later.
Jasper, what do you think? Do you think any amount of preparation would have made a difference? I know Bahamians like to prepare for a storm. We stock up, we do what we have to do. But from your perspective, do you think there was anything more that anyone could have done, or was it just?
Yes and no. So a side note, ironically, when I made it to Grand Bahama a month later, I interviewed the grandmother and the mother of that same family that perished, that Kyle would have had the footage on. As it relates to Grand Bahama, I mean, I do think there were some areas where people may not have taken it as seriously just because of our own past experiences with storms. But a lot of the other areas, especially within Freeport, where they weren't on the list, to evacuate, those individuals were still having water come up so high in their houses, and they still had to, run out in the middle of the storm to find shelter. So I don't think that they could have prepared anymore. They were told to stay at home. They're not in an evacuation zone. They were told to board up and, get what you need. And they still had to run out. Abaco, essentially the same thing. They said especially the Keys should be the ones to evacuate, but the Keys did not get hit as bad as Marsh Harbor and other areas where there wasn't maybe as much focus. So I feel like it's a yes and no kind of situation. I think it was a learning thing. We know for the future not to take any kind of storm as a joke, because Dorian was a tropical storm that Tuesday. By Thursday was like a 1 or 2, and nobody was expecting a category 7 or whatever that really was.
Listen, Jasper, you don't know what it's like we were under the gun in Freeport, and I remember walking out into the actual area, and they were listening to the news, and they said, "Wait, the storm ain't moving?" I said, "What you mean it ain't moving?" It said, "It's going at 0 miles per hour." I'm like, "This thing outside is just sitting there?" I said, "Yep."
Just
and it's
chilling over Grand Bahama,
maybe 2 days, yeah.
Not obviously. I was in Nassau at the time, and on the western end of the island as the storm was passing. And I remember, there's a window up here that wasn't sort of boarded up. And I remember looking out this window and just thinking, if this is what it's like in Nassau, I can't really imagine what it's like in Grand Bahama, because even though it was pretty chilled, it was still pretty windy. At one point, I thought the door was about to bust open. Like, it still was pretty choppy in Nassau. You know what I mean? But when I got that text from a friend of mine that was like, "Wait, the storm slowed down," and then I started checking the weather updates, I was just horrified. I don't think I slept that much that night. I have some real close friends that, even now they still live in Abaco, and they own businesses. And these are people's homes I used to stay in, and they like sent me photos and was like, "Nick, it's all gone." Their houses across the road from where it used to be. My boy owned a restaurant called The Bay. Shout out to Brad, and he lost that. It's just it's crazy.
I spent that entire night when the storm sat on Grand Bahama. I think that was the only night where I didn't get any kind of sleep. I was in several Grand Bahama hurricane groups, and I was just telling people, look, I'm in Nassau, I got phone service and I got internet. send me your locations and I'll call all of the emergency hotlines and I'll see if you can get on a list to be rescued, because I just don't know what else to do, you know?
And while we're here, we have to give kudos to a company like Alive. Shameless plug, because
for real.
They literally being there. Exactly. No, being there, they literally saved lives during that storm. When the other provider went down, you had people who were in their roofs reaching out to us. They're like, man, you have to know somebody because I'm in my roof in this location. I'm here. And my friend Kimberly Mullings, like, I was sending stuff to her and sending stuff to Iram Lewis, Quizzy Thompson, and also who was in charge of NEMA up there. I was sending things to everyone. As soon as people sent locations, I forward them away, and they literally kept people in communication and saved a lot of lives during that storm. And so you have to give kudos, and that shows
big shout to Alive.
Proper infrastructure in times of crisis that we need.
So you guys obviously would be writing the stories from start straight through up until, let's say Abaco and Grand Bahama bounce back. In your chronologies, where do you think we are now? Like, how far are we from Dorian damage to? Are we closer to Dorian damage, or are we closer to being back to 100%?
I mean, it's August 23rd. It's almost a year after the storm, and people I would have interviewed 3 days after Dorian passed are just getting their electricity, restored. Other people are still living in tents. And I mean, of course, that's not to blame anybody. It's been a very difficult year when you take into consideration the pandemic kind of slowing down a lot of things. But I don't think much progress is happening right now. That's in my opinion, of course.
I guess it's the same for me. I've kind of been keeping a watch on what's happening in Grand Bahama, seeing that's where I spend the storm. There has been some progress, but there could have been more, And then the COVID situation really hampered a lot of the progress as well. So a lot of things could not get done. So not pointing any fingers or anything, but more could have happened. And I'm concerned about if there is to be another storm now, what happens to those people who would have started to fix things and those who still don't have the roofs over their head as properly as they would like it to be. So I don't know. You still have a lot of displaced families. People still living with other people, So it's still a sad state. And I think next weekend makes 1 year, Jasper.
Yeah.
So
correct. Yeah. Is it that the help is slow to arrive, or is it that it's just not there?
I think once the help is there, I remember at the beginning of the pandemic, a lot of the people with the Disaster Reconstruction Authority and the Ministry of Disaster Preparedness were kind of saying, because the pandemic was onset, a lot of the volunteers for some of the international NGOs kind of had to go back to where they came from just to wait out the pandemic. Nobody would have expected that 5-6 months later, we're still here waiting for things to kind of calm down. So I think a lot of the hands that could have been helping are just not able to do so because of the worsening pandemic, especially like what we're seeing now, like since July 18th, 1,600 new cases. So I think as long as, and that's why I keep on telling people, like, COVID is real. We got to make the Bahamas COVID free again. So people in Abaco, people in Grand Bahama, people in Ragged Island, let's not forget about them, can start to have things progress for them, because as long as we keep on slacking and slunking and thinking because we're not being impacted, all is good, those people are still kind of having to put their lives on hold and they can't get anything done because the economy and the government is kind of shut down temporarily.
Yeah, very true.
While we're here, not shaming anybody, but I would also like to see a clear outline of the role of the Disaster Reconstruction Authority and NEMA. Because while they both do their work, I don't know, I know I'm going to catch flack for this, but there's a certain agency that's tasked with dealing with emergencies, and it seems as though every time there is one regarding a hurricane, they drop the ball, especially when it comes to Family Island residents. And it's not fair to them. It's not fair. Grand Bahama in particular, we saw it with even Walkine as well. If your one role is to deal with emergencies, my God, if we have hurricanes towards the end of the summer every year, we should have a plan in place that should be able to be rolled out just like that. You will have hiccups. Nothing is perfect. Nothing is
perfect. Having a plan helps.
Yeah, have a plan. Have a plan that people can know what to do when things like this happen. We are going to have hurricanes. You know what I mean? I don't know. I don't want to seem frustrated or anything like that, but it bothers me. It bothers me because that's their one job. Their one job.
Yeah, 100%. So if you want to talk about planning, this might be a convenient time to segue. Where's the COVID plan?
Where's the plan for the economy?
Is what I'm saying. So I'm gonna drop this little thought, and then I'm gonna let the conversation go where it wants. From my perspective, I thought that in the beginning the government did a good damn job of managing the pandemic. You know why? I made this comparison yesterday. Have you both seen The Dark Knight? The Christopher Nolan, with the Joker.
Yes. You mean
Heath Ledger's Joker. Just got to make sure. Okay, so in The Dark Knight, the Joker gives this speech. Everybody likes to hate on the Joker because he's the bad guy, but he's the bad guy that we love. But in any event, he gives that famous speech where he says, as long as things go according to a plan, no matter what the plan is, everybody is fine. But the minute something happens that's outside of that plan, everybody loses their minds. I think that the country was calm when we had a phase 1A, phase 1B, phase 2, blah, blah, blah. When there was a timeline, there was a chronology. We knew when we were going to be able to do things, when certain rights would be restored over what time period. And then I'm going to say this candidly and frankly and obscenely, it all went to shit. Now, I can't say precisely when I think it went to shit, but it definitely went to shit. I mean, there's been emergency order after emergency order. People don't know what the rules are. The government's doing a terrible job of communicating the rules. Quite frankly, if Jasper wasn't on Twitter, half the fucking country wouldn't know what emergency orders we're supposed to follow or what it is we're supposed to be doing right now. So with that in mind, where's the COVID plan? Like, you go ahead and weigh in on that. What do you guys think?
I want to give kudos to my good friend Jasper, because she has displayed what you call new age journalism. It's gone are the days when people wait until 7:30 to see what happens on the news. You know what I mean? While people still do that. People want to hear and find out things immediately, right away. Jasper is incredible with transcribing.
Jasper be low-key tweeting what the prime minister saying before he says it.
No. And you have to respect that. You know what I mean? This is another form of keeping people informed, and you have to respect that. Now, as for the whole plan situation, you're right in terms of communication. A lot of money goes into the budget for communication for the office of the prime minister, if I'm correct, Jasper. A whole lot of money. People shouldn't have to wait to find out or to see little clearly scanned documents circulating on WhatsApp. If you're saying something on a Monday, you know what I mean? Like, there should be some communication is off, man. It's horrible. The Bahamians are just lost. Things are changing so rapidly, and it's confusing to not just those who have PhDs and bachelors. It's confusing to the simple person, and that's one thing they teach us in college. When you do your news, you should tell your story in a way that the simplest of people can understand.
That's why so many people like the punch.
For me,
I shouldn't make that joke.
For me, so the thing I want the most is an economic plan. It's cool to see when everything is reopening. That's, great. But my biggest concern this entire pandemic has been, we just had $3.2 billion worth of damage and loss from Dorian. Our economy's been on halt basically since March. We can't go until November like this. Like, honestly, anyone who says it's possible, please give me whatever you're on, because it's just not realistic, And so to me, that's the biggest concern. Usually when the prime minister comes on and talks, I like the addresses. They tell me what's happening with the healthcare system. They tell me the breakdown, I find out which lockdowns are coming tomorrow, whatever. But the thing I always want to hear is, I want to be reassured that we're not going to have an economic collapse. Like, I understand our healthcare system is teetering on the brink of whatever, but now reassure me that the dollar is not going to collapse. Reassure me that this recession isn't going to last for a decade. That's what I want to hear, not as a journalist, but as a Bahamian, as a taxpayer, as someone who votes, as somebody who loves the Bahamas. I want to make sure that the economy is cool. Like, I think a lot of people, that's what we care about. Second thing, Communication. I mean, last night the dashboard came out at 1 a.m. Like,
I saw that when I woke
up.
up this morning. I was like, seriously, man, come on. 1 in the morning?
I think what, and you know, Kyle makes a fair point. Communication is an important thing, but I like to usually give kudos because there are like a lot of amazing people working at different departments in government who do work with the media, who always makes the information accessible, and they're doing the best to get it out as fast as they could, dealing with all of the bureaucracy that they have to encounter. My biggest issue is we need that on a higher level. You know, when we call certain people, and I'm not calling names, but when we call certain people, answer your phone. Even if you're gonna tell me I don't have a comment for you, okay, just tell me that. Don't deny the call, don't decline, don't just ignore, you know, because I'm not.
Does that happen often?
Listen, and that's a major issue. Sorry, Jasper, that's a major issue we have here in the country. You have people who hold these positions, high positions in government, and they do not make themselves available to answer questions. And you have to understand, we live in a society where whenever there's an open area, when there is space, whenever there is no communication, people don't have the answers, there's room for rumors and inaccurate information to spread. And that's more damaging than you just trying to hide the facts of whatever you're trying to avoid. And I think that's an issue we have. And
do you think, let me put a pin in that right quick. Do you think that the Prime Minister should be giving addresses where journalists are not allowed to be, where the media is not allowed to be present?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I know the governor for New York, Andrew Cuomo, some have criticized him or whatever, but I totally respect the way he handled the situation over there. When they were in the height of their situation, they had daily press briefings where the press got to ask him questions. We have questions as well. It is unacceptable that we have to guess when we'll be able to once again hear from our competent authority or the health officials. Over the past few weeks, they've had press conferences every Friday. We had none this past Friday. None, even if it was just digital. There are certain things that the authority has to be able to answer. The Haymans are literally wondering what's next, what is going to happen. And because you do not speak to them, they create rumors. And what happened on Monday, where you have people, you've been telling people since March, okay, don't listen to rumors. If it's not coming from government, don't listen to it at all. And so when people heard rumors of the 7-day lockdown, you had some like myself who said, no, that's not going to happen. But then you also had others who said, you know, I should take heed. And people lined up outside of grocery stores. And those who listened to the rumors got the upper hand in that situation. And it should not be the case.
That should never be the case, though.
That should never be the case.
Yeah, I think that you can go so far as to say the government almost owes us a duty to communicate effectively, because they are the people that are put there to say, hey, these are the decisions that we're making. This is what the plan is that we have put in place for you. And then we are the people who have to say, okay, cool, we can work with this. Or, hey, chief, no, you're doing too much. You know, I've taken this position in a lot of different contexts, and the one that sort of strikes closest to home is with the Arawaki vendors. So, you know, I'm not bad-mouthing any restaurants or anything, but I got to call names in order for the context to make sense. But you have, you know, Mahogany House, Cricket Club. They're open. You know, they have people pulling up, deliver curbside, whatever you call it. The lockdown orders literally say that a restaurant must have, you know, a certificate from the Ministry of Health. It must have a certain aesthetic. You have to have your occupancy, and you have to have certain protocols in place. Then if you look at the July 27th order, the first schedule says that specifically Arawaki restaurants cannot open. So how can, on the one hand, the order say restaurants can open if these restaurants meet the criteria, but then close the entirety of Arawaki? I don't understand that. It's never been fair to me. So it makes me wonder two things. Who is advising the competent authority in that vein? And why would that be a part of the advice?
That's been a major question. A lot of people have been asking when I went out on the streets. People said, who's advising this man? Who is doing the advising? And, you know, some have questioned whether there is a level of discrimination within there. You don't want to say that. You don't want to point fingers or make accusations. But one has to wonder as well. And this is the reason why press conferences are so important. So people can ask you questions and you'll be able to explain your rationale behind making some of these decisions. Because in the place of that, when in the absence of that, you have people who will make up things. And like I said, rumors, especially in our society, are taken as truth by some people. Right, Jasper?
Yes, and that's one of the reasons I got on Twitter was, when you look at a pandemic, like during Dorian, we saw a lot of fake news start to, let me not call it fake news, that's such a Donald Trump word, false information started to on social media. And with a pandemic, I figured they could circulate hell more false information. And so I figured the best way to combat that and try to make sure that people felt like a net of safety was to try to push as much correct information out there to people as frequently as I possibly could. The issue now is that you have health officials, not all, like we have a lot of great ones like Dr. Forbes, we have Dr. Brennan, who they're like, even if they have no response, they'll be like, I'll try to find it, but there's nothing I can do. Erica Wells, for the most part, who's the director of communications for OPM, also does, at least in my experience with her, a pretty good job at communicating. But those higher ups, I always tell them when I get on the phone, I'm not chasing clout as a journalist. I honestly don't even want to write any stories. Like, I would rather be in bed watching Hulu, We're in the middle of a pandemic, so people need to know information. And you can't get mad when the fake news comes out when you don't want to talk. Like, the best way to control the narrative is to get in front of the stories. The nurses union should not have to tell us that there were cases at Sandilands. The nurses union should not have to tell us that a nurse died of COVID. A statement should have been out from Friday night about that, And I think sometimes people get lost in so many different things that they forget. The main goal is just to inform people. Like, we're not asking you to break any laws, any patient confidentiality. Just push information. You have a PR team. Most of them worked in news. They know how to go about it the right way. Just push information, as much information. Let us tell you you're giving us too much information, But
it makes you wonder about the things that we did not know prior to, I think, 92, before the airwaves were liberalized, before there was private media houses, because it seems that we're getting back to those days where government entities are trying. It's fine with trying to control your narrative, but be honest, be upfront, be open. If there's an issue within PMH where there's a leaky roof or nurses and doctors contracting COVID, tell us about it. We shouldn't have to hear through the rumor mill or from a union rep that they're concerned that you aren't testing their members or patients on the board are exposing them. We should know if we are in a crisis or not.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Loaded question. Do you think that, I'm going to say that I think it's deliberate. You don't have to agree. But do you think that that is done in order to conceal information, or is it just that, maybe not everybody is press savvy. Maybe people are just more cautious. They don't want to step left or right unless the prime minister says, "Hey, go ahead and say that."
Why does the prime minister have to say, "Go ahead and say that"?
Party unity, perhaps. I don't know. Maybe that's. I'll play devil's advocate in that regard. Maybe you have to take a unified position.
The prime minister has said this is not a partisan issue. The Haymans on all sides of the aisle are dying. This isn't the prime minister. The prime minister is the head of the cabinet. As far as, and I'm not a legal person. I didn't get a degree in policy or political science. I'm new to this. I'm a cub reporter in my mind still. So tell me if I did it for Kyle's face. So
Jasper is not a cub reporter. Jasper is far from a cub reporter. She needs to stop saying that right now, because she's doing far better than a lot of these people who call themselves vets.
But
you heard it from the man himself.
The prime minister should have to say, Ministry of Finance, you could say this, or Ministry of Health, you could say that. I just think if it's the information, it's the information. Like,
well, let's look at what our neighbors to the north did. So there came a point where the U.S. government, the president, I believe it was Trump, who made a statement saying that all of the information that the CDC was putting out into the public had to first come to the White House. What if it's one of those? They're going back to some kind of weird, like, Machiavellian principle: only give the people good news. Not we have an increase in COVID. Don't tell them we have an increase in COVID cases. tell them that we have not had any more COVID deaths. You know what I mean?
Listen, I understand that, and I got that perspective. I think it was 2 weeks ago, where you want people to be somewhat, or keep their mind somewhat at ease. You don't give them too much bad information. And one thing that I would credit some media houses will give them wrong with doing is, you would be watching something and you see to the right side, they have the whole dashboard of this number of cases, this number of deaths. After a while, that would send you crazy. Yeah. That's a lot of depressing information. You know, there's a certain part of your programming where in my opinion, you can put that up there. But in terms of suppressing information, that's what you're talking about, right?
Yeah.
Or controlling what comes out.
Yeah, I don't want to use the word suppressing. I'm not trying to suggest that anyone's hiding anything. I'm just trying to say that there's a controlled outflow. Put it that way.
Okay. For example, when we call, Jasper can attest to this as well. When we have to clarify something, we try to call the minister. I know people would say, "Oh, I'm tired of hearing politicians on news." They're the only ones who respond to us.
Okay.
The permanent secretary should be the one who tells us, or the director in the department should be the one who tells us, this is true, this is false, this is what you should know. But that's not the case, because there's a hierarchy that every time you call, oh, I have to hear from this. Oh, did the minister speak to you as yet? No, why should I have to hear from the minister? You're the director, you're the permanent secretary. I should hear from you. I see Jasper's talking. Your mic's on mute, I think.
Even when the minister would tell me, like, I know there have been times when Dr. Santos minister, he'd tell me to call this person, or Diagula, or Turnquist, or even Lewis. Well, not even Lewis, because his ministry usually works very well with us because they're new. But like, you know, a lot of the ministers would be like, I'd ask them a question and they'd be like, you know, so many different things fall under my portfolio. So just call the person in this department and I'll tell them that, you know, you're going to call. And they would give them the heads up, you know, and they would send me the contact and all. And I'd call and they're just like, I ain't got nothing to say. Or did you ask the minister? And I'm like, the minister sent me to you.
Does that come from a responsibility place? Like they know the answers to the questions, but they don't want to be the ones to say it, do you think? I'm trying to really get to it.
That's exactly it. A lot of them don't want to be the one responsible for putting out, I guess, what some would call bad news. But if you're telling the truth, you're being honest, I think the public would appreciate that more. I would credit two ministers for doing what Jasper said. I think Darren Henfield, who's the Minister of Foreign Affairs, he does an incredible job with that. If there's something I need to find out, okay, call the Director General or this and that. Here's a number, I'm going to tell you you're calling. And she picks up the phone and she gives me the answers that I'm trying to find out. Dwayne Sands, who's no longer the minister, but he was one who was accessible as well.
Regrettably.
But he understood the importance of giving pertinent information in a timely manner. So.
Well, that's good. At least the whole bushel isn't spoiled by a few bad apples, I guess. Are you satisfied? Are you satisfied in terms of the breakdown of information that you're getting, or could things be, I guess, broken down into more specific terms? So we have 1,700 COVID cases. We have X amount of deaths, we have X amount of this, but where are they? You know, where are the hot spots now? What is happening? Who's getting infected? Can we see this on a graph? Like, are you satisfied with the information?
I mean, it's August 23rd. It's been, more than 3 weeks since they started having cases at PMH and at SRC and at the RAND. And we still don't know how many people have contracted COVID-19 at the Sandilands Rehabilitation Center. We still don't know how many people have contracted COVID-19 at the Princess Margaret Hospital. We still don't know how many people have contracted COVID-19 at a number of other facilities. And when you ask them questions during the press conference, there's no response. If you WhatsApp them questions, there's no response. When you call them, you know, Ministry of Health is saying, go call the Public Hospitals Authority. Public Hospitals Authority is telling you, go call the hospital administrator, who's telling you to go back to the Public Hospitals Authority. And so there's just no clarity on information. And that's really with that one particular thing right there, because that has been something that has been, as the older folks say, has been waxing my spirit.
And in addition to what Jasper said, I think we've gotten to the point now where we can have more detailed information.
For some reason, I'm having a hard time hearing you guys now.
You can hear us now? Because we can hear and see you, but you just froze.
Okay, boom, I got it back.
Okay, good. Now, just piggybacking on what Jasper said just now, I think we've gotten to the point where the public deserves more detailed information, because we get the dashboard, we get some of we get the accompanying document with that. But I mean, we look at places, other countries, and how they release their daily dashboard and the information that comes out. It can be done. In 2020, I think we can do this. We deserve to know where these the areas these people lived in. Is there a hotspot in a certain part of town? Where do you think? Detail us the age, the breakdown. They were doing quite fine with that, I think, for a week or so. But we need a bit more detail, and a plan from not just the health officials, but the competent authority. And I think that's really what people want and are crying out for. A detailed plan in terms of Ministry of Health and for the economy, because at this point, the economy is dying. Strong word, but the economy is dying. It's suffering.
I think that's a fair and appropriate word. I mean, my viewpoint has been for some time now that, look, we can't trust what other countries are doing, but we can make our own situation better. Maybe keep the international borders closed, or, you know, if you're going to do more rigorous testing, fine, allow tourists in. But it's safe to say we're not going to have cruise ships for the near future. You know what I mean? So control the airports, control that properly, enforce the regulations. And then what you need to do, or what they need to do, is open the domestic economy. Let Bahamians be in a position to spend what money they have with Bahamian businesses, so those businesses can pay other people, so those people can go and spend their money, and the economy can start to function. Is that a position that you find agreeable, or does the information that you guys may be privy to that I'm not suggest that that may be a bad idea for, you know, more reasons than one?
I mean, I think Juan did a Facebook post that said that he was telling a family member that we don't have drive-thrus or food delivery that doesn't require contact available right now. I mean, people could say just road, so as long as there are hours to be on the road. You know, I think whatever ways we can nurture the economy and ensure, you know, the impact isn't as bad, I think we should take those paths. I mean, I'm not saying to go open up Waterloo and Bond and Aura for people to get in small rooms and go wild, but, you know, there are some businesses that allow for social distancing and allow for taxes to be paid and for the economy to get a little something.
That's a tricky one, because when I think about businesses that I'd want to open in terms of priority, it would be the ones that contribute the most in terms of taxes, because that's what the government needs, that's what the country needs. Which leaves out one very critical, usually vociferous, but curiously quiet group of people, that being the churches. Everybody made a face just now. Where's the press release from the Christian Council been on this whole thing?
Listen, I'm going to step in real quick, because
Go ahead.
The Christian Council has become one of the least popular bodies throughout this entire situation. Over the past few years, they've been speaking out on things, a lot of things that people felt the church should not have been speaking out on, but, you know, you give everybody their position. Well, I'm Christian.
Do you think the church and state should be mixed?
No.
Well,
I've never believed that. And I will give churches kudos here, because you have a lot of churches feeding people daily within their communities. I've seen it with my own two eyes, and who aren't calling me, Jasper, aren't calling cameras or reporters there to document it. You have some who do, but then you have many more who do not. And you have to give them credit, because while people think that the church just puts out these press statements, you know, that's the Christian Council, but you have a lot of churches who don't even bother with all of that stuff and do their part. So why
don't the other churches ever step up and disagree publicly? Like, I never understood the function of the Christian Council. That's what's always troubled me. Like, yes, they are a group of church leaders. I get it. You have the right to form whatever association you want, but what is your business in interfering with sovereign affairs? You know what I mean?
But Nick, you're a lawyer, so you should tell me, is the church in the Constitution?
You know, the church is not in the Constitution. Everyone takes, I mean, you have freedom, your freedom to practice whatever religion you wish. You know, that much is enshrined in your fundamental rights. But in terms of the church being a part of the Constitution, what I think you're asking me is, where does the Christian element or the Christian reference come into our societal framework? It's actually in the beginning of the Constitution, where it says, I mean, I can actually put my hand on a copy of it right now, I think, But paraphrasing, it says that we shall be a nation that will abide by Christian principles. But I mean, you can abide by principles. I can't think of a delicate way to say this. Abiding by saying that we are a nation that abide by Christian principles does not give the Christian Council power. I don't think it does. That's my viewpoint.
Yeah, Jasper, you go first because you go first, Jasper. Your mic's mute.
I think your mic is muted, Jasper. Nope. Try again.
Okay. Yeah, it's unmute, but we can't hear you. Well, until she sorts that out. I've never had anybody, because I've read parts of the Constitution for myself when I did civics in high school. And then when I got into college, I tried to figure it out for myself. And I see references to God in the Constitution. You do. As a lawyer, you do. That's my thing. And so I think that gives the church position to speak on certain issues. However, we've gotten to the point where, particularly when it comes to the Christian Council, the issues that some of they choose to speak on sometimes, you have to question, okay, where were you when the situation was much more dire? And I think that's what people have an issue. With. When Carnival came about, they were out in strong numbers. When the voting referendum came out, the church is really responsible for that vote no.
No, let me say it. Let me say what you can't say. The church, in my view, is responsible for manipulating the information released about that referendum and creating the result that ended up occurring.
I wouldn't even say that, I would not say I would not say just you would put that in the hands of the church. At that time, especially the referendum, even when it came down to the gender equality referendum, you would remember a certain individual who now holds probably one of the highest offices in our country decided not to take a side and said, vote your conscience. That man had a lot of power and influence to say, vote yes or vote no. I think we've gotten to the point as a society where our people do not think for themselves as often as they should. And I'm not blaming the church, and I'm not blaming anybody, because the church does what it has to do. But you as an individual, you have the ability to think for yourself.
But I disagree. I don't think the church is doing what it has to do. I think the church is doing what it wants to do. Because if the church was doing what it has to do, what the church has to do is put out objective, fair information and intertwine whatever Christian principles may apply, but give the people the ultimate responsibility of taking that information and making an informed decision for themselves. I don't think that means that saying, adding the insertion of the word sex in a constitutional provision is going to open the door for gay marriage. I think that means saying the Bible says this, the constitutional change says that, these are the different things that can occur if this change happens. You have this principle, you have the law, here you go, make a decision. But the information never comes like that. I mean, you two can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think the information ever comes like that. It always comes in the form of, this is what we think, this is what we say, this is wrong, listen.
You're right there. You're right there. And that's where you have two sides of an argument. Because the vote yes people did not do what you were saying, though. The vote yes people didn't present the facts just like that. The vote no people didn't do that just like that either. So they both did their thing and just one side happened to win. And that's where you as an individual have to say, let me use my common sense and let me do my research for myself. I voted. I will not say what I voted, obviously. But I get what people are saying about the church. I get it. But you also have to understand their position. The church is coming from what it believes is morally right. And so you can't give them fault for that. What I do somewhat give the church fault for is what the issues that it chooses to speak out on sometimes, and from what it doesn't.
They're very selective.
Wow.
Very, very, very selective.
Jasper, you want to jump in and throw some blows here?
No. I mean, it's going to be very brief. I just believe in a separation of church and state, and I'm going to leave it as that. So I don't believe certain institutions should try to influence whether for or against policy, but I just don't believe religious institutions should interfere with matters of governance or government, whether it be a Christian, Jewish, an atheist, a agnostic, Muslim. Leave religion to religion and governance to governance. My thoughts. Unpopular opinion.
Fair enough. I mean, I think that's the way society ought to function. You know, I have no problem. I'm also a Christian. I feel like I should say I'm not attacking the church directly or really at all. I just believe that when you are presenting the public with information, you have to be very careful to exercise great responsibility in what you say to people, because there's a lot of people that aren't going to fact check something that comes from a bishop, or they're not going to fact check something that comes from their pastor. The pastor's going to say this thing, and they're going to say, okay, well, Reverend says it, pastor says it, so I'm with it. And that for me is the problem. So I don't know if I can take my foot up off their neck in the sense, I mean, you can apply this formula to anybody. You can apply it to the government too. Don't politicize information. Make it as unbiased as possible. Bias it toward fairness, to use a direct quote from the newsroom. You know what I mean? I mean, can either of you think of an instance when maybe that's happened that I missed, or I don't know. I just feel like information's not spread that way.
Talking about fairness in terms of what?
Well, as we talked about the referendum, fairness in terms of how information is presented. Instead of saying this is going to lead to this, say this could lead to this, but it could also lead to that, so you know both sides of the argument. I
think, and I'm going to catch flack again for this. It's unfortunate that in 2020, we've developed into a society that does not think. We've grown into a really silly set of people where, rather than finding out things for themselves, people would take whoever they find as their trusted source, whether it's their grandmother or whomever, and take that as gospel and they run with it. We've come to a point where we can think for ourselves. I trust Nick, I trust Jasper, I trust both of you with just about anything but my life. But there are certain things, Nick is one of my closest lawyer friends ever. But if he says something, I'm going to fact check for myself. And our Bahamians do not do that. I love my mother, I love my grandmothers to death. And there are certain beliefs that they've instilled in me, but I will still fact check for myself. Because one, even when it comes down to the Bible, it goes based off of interpretation, just as the law does. And I think we need more Bahamians who are going to stop, think, and do research for themselves before they make a decision that can affect not just themselves, but their children. I was watching news this past week. I think this is when the commissioner of police was in a community. They were handing out PPEs and water. And there was this guy who said, you know, the government needs to give a small loan to every Bahamian of $10,000 or $20,000. And, you know,
20 grand, yeah.
Yeah, if the children got to pay that back, then that's fine. What are you saying? So you want your kids to grow up paying a debt that you left behind for them? And that shows the mentality or the psyche of our people. And I think about this daily. It's dangerous. We are in a position now where our mentality as a people is very, very dangerous. And I've said this before, and don't think I'm crazy. One, everybody believes they're smarter than everybody else. Two, everybody believes they're better than everybody else. And three, we just do not think for ourselves. And those are three things that I really want to see change for us. But unfortunately, COVID has made that situation much, much worse. And you can't blame people in the state that we're in. So,
does that? I guess Jasper sort of uses social media a little more frequently than you have been lately. I know you said you were on social media hiatus. So I'll direct this to Jasper, but you can jump in if you wish. Does what Kyle described frustrate you as a journalist? It's like, I'm telling you right now what the unbiased thing is, and yet here you are making these decisions. Do you ever feel that, you know, like kind of in your bones? We can't hear you again.
Oh, what is happening? Can you hear me?
There we go. We're back.
You're good now. We're good.
Okay. I post something like, I don't know, Prime Minister's literal press statement or the emergency orders. So there's no way of politicizing it with my opinion, you know? And I'd post it with a summary. And, you know, I'd have individuals retweet it with their own thing and kind of ignoring it. Or somebody DM me and say, I know, you guys said there's been 1,600 new cases, but just wrote COVID ain't real. And I'm like, what? And they're just like, because, they're making it all up. And I'm like, why do you say that? Because the New World Order, and I respect all opinions. I like to put that out there. But I'm like, when we're playing with lives, it's very frustrating because I'm like, I'm giving you the facts. Like, I'm not trying to lie to you. I don't think Minnis is trying to lie to you because he wants to win the next election, And I'm like, this is just the raw information, and folks are like rejecting it. And I'm like, but what are you getting from rejecting it? Like, I don't understand. Like, this isn't one of those things you can just twist and, make into, I can now go to the beach if I reject the information. You're still on lockdown,
Yeah.
Kyle,
you want to type in on that?
We have that all the time. Because I just had a friend who cussed me out about 2 hours ago. But that's my friends. I love them. They tell me whatever. But some of them feel as though they can not get the truth from the news. Although sometimes we tell you just exactly what the person said. They're like, oh, well, reporters always lie and blah, 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 blah. And that's just the way some people think.
Yeah.
So,
I
don't know.
I guess you're entitled to feel how you feel. I guess my personal standpoint is that, I like the work that you guys do. I think you report the news in a way that, for me, it's fair. I think it's palatable for everybody. I just think a lot of, the public kind of gets lost in the peripheral opinions of what is happening, and they lose sight of the facts. It is what it is. You can't really control the way everybody perceives or absorbs the reality or situation, I guess.
And I think a lot of people are just scared. So like that
too.
Causing them to kind of reject it, because if I deny it, that means I don't have to deal with this really big and really scary thing that's happening all around me.
The other side of that coin is confirmation bias, though, because someone goes and spreads a rumor, and then someone sees someone tweet something that sounds like what they got in the rumor, and then it makes sense, and they're like, well, that I can work with that. So, I mean, I don't know. I'm not envious of I don't envy either of you, because that's a tough responsibility.
And that's the downside to social media, because social media has given literally everyone a microphone to say whatever they want to say, and then you leave journalists in a position where we have to confirm or deny that this is accurate. And a lot of these things that circulate on documents, we get them and we're like, whoa, where did this come from? It's hard. It's really, really hard. While we appreciate social media because it shows us what's happening within these communities and things and that kind of stuff, it also makes it very, very hard to refute any kind of information, because Bahamians, we are a gullible set of people. And we rather believe.
Yeah.
I lie, Jasper.
I'm not. I plead the fifth.
Ain't it the truth sometimes, though? It is the truth sometimes, unfortunately.
But sometimes, the rumors are correct. I mean, I was getting word
on Monday
of a 7-day lockdown 4 days before the lockdown was even announced. Diaglo was saying it was fake news, and social media just happened to be right,
And see, that's a good example of what I mean in terms of who knows what and who's passing what information, because in terms of who's saying what to the public, there shouldn't be, I don't want to highlight him because I think it's the principle, not the individual that I'm attacking here. But one minister shouldn't be making an announcement that then is completely nullified by the actions of...
I'm going to have to defend him in this. I'm going to have to defend him in this regard, because he wasn't making an announcement. You have to understand, in those settings, that second time, he was downstairs outside of our office, and he was asked the question. He has never been one of those ministers who dances around a question.
Yeah.
The first time when he made the pronouncement was outside of cabinet, where a bunch of reporters were there, and I actually asked him, I said, listen, there are rumors of a 2-week lockdown. Is this true? And he answered, he said, currently, before cabinet, no, we have not discussed this in cabinet. You see what I'm saying? So,
okay, see, that for me, then I'll retract my comment to a degree. I think that in that vein, what that means is that he answered based on the information that he had available to him at the time.
Yes.
However, that then takes me to the point where I wonder, if we knew what you just told, when I say we, if the Bahamian people knew what you just said to me, would he still have taken that flack for making that comment? Because he took a lot of heat for that.
He did, and he still does. And that's where, I don't want to say common sense, but it is common sense, because if it was a pronouncement, it would have come from the Prime Minister himself. De Aguilar, who is not the competent authority, would not be making a pronouncement outside of a TV station or outside of cabinet. It would have been the competent authority. He, as the cabinet minister, was standing in front of reporters. Reporters said, listen, you all discuss the important issues of our country upstairs there at their table. Is this on the table? And he said currently, no, this was not discussed in cabinet. I don't know if this is something the Prime Minister kept near and dear to his chest and didn't disclose it with his own cabinet colleagues. But at that time, De Aguilar said, no, we didn't discuss it. And you can't blame him for that, because, again, he is not the competent authority.
And he's only speaking for what he knows. So, I mean,
I'll agree with that. Like I said, I don't blame him, but I still feel in that, in that situation, even if it wasn't before cabinet, the fact that somebody is asking may have made another individual say, perhaps I should just say, I don't know. I think that's a very hard phrase.
That's a good point. You can also say, no, but I guess the issue people took was that he was what you call strong and wrong.
Because it sounded very confident.
He said it so strongly and confidently. So people were like, okay, so he has to be right. But again,
that's his personality, though. That's just his personality. Like, that's all he was saying.
Well, I mean, we as the general public don't get to know the personality of the ministers outside of the rallies and stuff like that. You hardly ever see them. You guys get to know their personality because you have to see them in the course of your work, and you have to be around these people. So, I mean, nothing against him personally. I don't know the man on any level. I just take him.
He's a good guy. I'll give you this. He's a good guy. He's one of the few in cabinet who actually answers his phone. 2, and 3, he's very straightforward and forthcoming with information, and that's something we need more of in governance. I respect a cabinet minister when they can give me the information. I ask you a question. If you can't answer that, say I can't answer it right now. I rather that than you just don't answer the phone or you dance.
What I really appreciate are the cabinet ministers who, if they don't have the comment, they will say, give me until Monday and I will get you that information. Let me call this person, I'll call you right back.
Fair enough. I think De Aguilar, though, he's not a politician. He's just a businessman. That man is not. He's not cut from a political cloth. I mean, people can say whatever the hell they want about him, but he's a businessman. He's no politician. I think the fact that he doesn't have as much fluff makes a big difference.
See, that creates another segue, though, Nick. Are we at the point now where we don't need any more politicians around? I mean,
I think we've been past that point. We didn't need more politicians in 2012, man. We didn't need 1997. Well, I was too young then to really have an opinion on that, I suppose. But we've not needed politicians for a long time. What we need are people who are professionals. We need like a technocratic government, like what Italy tried to do with like Mario Monti in 2011, like the post Berlusconi years. They tried to form a government of like experts. So they grabbed an economist, they grabbed an attorney, they grabbed an accountant, they grabbed a businessman, they grabbed all these different people, and they all came together and they put that government together with a purpose. And the purpose was, we are the group that are going to fix the economy. We can't do the political thing. That's just all we're here for right now. I think that's the way the Bahamas should start to trend, because it's not that we have a lot of general problems. We have a few very specific problems.
Boy. And the general election 2022 is going to be one for the history books, in my opinion, because just as you said, we've gotten past that point where we just want regular politicians to come out there and sell us the fluff that we're used to hearing on a rally stage. We need more business people. We need more people with actual ideas, and those who aren't just willing to toe the party line until they can get to deputy leader or leader of their party. Because that's what's happening now. You have a lot of people auditioning and interviewing for the job of leadership. Mm-hmm. And it's rather unfortunate, because the ones who are left holding the short end of the stick are us, the voters. And I've spoken to a lot of people who simply, and intelligent people who aren't interested in showing up at the polls in 2022 because of, 1, the options before them, and 2, because they feel it's a waste of time.
What age group are these people? Because I actually made a note. I don't usually make notes when I have these sorts of like discussions with people because I kind of like it to flow. But Jasper made a point about the prime minister wanting to win the election, that being obviously the desire of a prime minister that is in the current government. But in terms of his road to 2022, there's two words I want to drop in the middle of whatever plan the government has because it's necessary now. Electoral debate. How do we make that happen?
Thank you. I'm glad you brought that up because I wanted to bring it up too. I would love for us to become as politically mature to that point where we can have a debate, whether it be within each constituency or just amongst the leader and the deputy leader of the party.
But they tried that during the last election. I remember attending one, I think, where you go, Alex Morley, Loretta Butler, those were all there at UB. I think Nicolette Bethel had kind of set it up, but it wasn't as much of a debate, more of a forum. And a lot of people just didn't show. It was primarily independents and DNAs. And I just don't know what's the thing with the major parties just not wanting to come and really do a House of Assembly type headbutting.
Because they acknowledge that a lot of their candidates aren't the best public speakers, and they're afraid of the questions that can come their way. But that shows the maturity of where we're at right now. Because we should be to the point where constituents should be able to come to, say, C.D. Bethel High School, listen to Jeff Floyd, whoever the PLP candidate is as well, and hear their ideas to find out who I'm going to vote for. We're still just blindly voting for colors and for parties.
I think it's more about hearing. I think there's more to it than just hearing ideas. In the same way that if one of you writes a story, someone can email you and ask you, hey, I think that one of these facts is wrong. We need to start being able to test these people. We need to fact check the things that they're bringing to their constituencies. Like, I don't want you to just tell me what your plan is. I want to ask you, so you said that at step 2, you're going to do this. How exactly is that going to help you get to step 3? What is this going to do for the community? I need to be able to, at this point, it needs to be more than a pamphlet, a T-shirt, and a cheesy campaign slogan. Like Bahamians, we need to be able to ask these people some questions at this point. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I mean, for me, I like the candidates that I currently have for my constituency. I live in Elizabeth. And so I think Senator Cobley is who they're setting up for the PLP because she left a little thing on my door to say something.
You're thinking, Jasper, you're thinking.
Senator Cobley is a good one. Good. Somebody I know personally, she has a deep love for this country.
So obviously I have her and Dr. Sands. So I'm really, intrigued. I'm loving watching the two of them on social media to, help do my thoughts. But, what I've been loving the most is the two campaign promises that stood out to me. And one is smaller in comparison to the other one from the last election. Well, one thing that always stood out to me from the F&M the last election was we're going to end social promotion. We have a lot of kids who graduate school at a 4th grade reading level, but they're graduating high school, and they're like, we're going to end this. And it's 2020, and I'm like, but we still got it.
Still happening.
And the PLP, they came and they were like, what? Free electricity for everyone. And I'm still trying to see how they were going to make that one happen. But I guess we'll never know.
We will never know. We will never know. If you guys had the chance to moderate an electoral debate, and you could ask, let's start with the prime minister. You could ask the prime minister 3 questions, let's say 3 questions. You each get 3. What 3 questions would you ping him with? No holds barred. Maybe he'll watch this and decide he wants to answer them. Who knows?
Me first or you, Jasper?
You first. I got it.
That's a tough question to ask right away, Nick.
That's the point.
I'm going to put this first question out there because a friend asked me, and they said, oh, y'all journalists don't ask the tough questions. So I'm going to put this as one of my questions. 1, who really runs the country? Is it the prime minister or those who fund the campaign? Those who would have had special interests in ensuring that you pay for your stage, your sound system, your elaborate rallies? Is it those people or is it you? 1. 2, do you really give the younger people within your team the voice that you say they do? Because we've seen 2 election cycles in a row where younger candidates are thrust to the forefront. We believe in the young people. We're going to do this. You saw in 2012, Bridge to the Future with Christie, and then half of that Bridge to the Future collapsed on the ride. Do you really have that confidence in the young people? Well, if that's the case, I want to see more of these younger folks on your team who you're using hold cabinet positions rather than just chairmanship of certain boards. That's 2. 3, I got to think about that one. I got to think about the third one, because that's a very loaded question, Nick. That's a very, very loaded question.
It is.
My questions aren't hard questions. I'm not, so if it's a debate, clearly it's just not for Minnis. So Minnis and Brave, Minnis and Davis, I got to put respect on both. So use both last names. My first question would be, where is your stance on the removal of colonial artifacts that glorify individuals like Queen Victoria and Christopher Columbus? I have a degree in race, and I study a lot of post-colonialism, so that's something that's very near and dear to my heart. 2, do you plan on making your non-cabinet appointees, like Education Loan Authority, Antiquities, what's it called, commission or whatever?
Antiquities, monuments.
Do you plan to make those appointments based on who was within your party or who's best fit for them? 3, are we going to continue to push the notion of being a Christian nation while still trying to claim that we need to execute individuals for crimes that we may not be 100% sure that they have actually committed?
And see, that right there, those I was going to say 5 questions that you both just generated. If you were allowed to ask those questions, this is my perception of how that would change the public discourse. Because it means now that question has been asked in the public domain. You have answered in the public domain. So now you can't go and, excuse my French, fuck around and go and do anything other than what you said you were going to do or feel about when you answered that question. I mean, why do you think this hasn't happened? It can't be because the candidates don't have the public speaking skills. Nobody's asking anyone to stand up and be Obama. We're just asking you to listen, think, and answer. If you can't do that, arguably, you shouldn't be in the damn position that you're in any event.
Listen, I've heard this side of the argument when people started to speak about it. People feel as though, there are some who feel as though, those opposing to debates feel as though you have really good talkers, but who do not do. And we've seen that in previous cases of ours. Those who can speak, who can talk really well, but then when it's time to act and to put those words into action, it doesn't happen. And so you can't really give them fault for that, because they feel as though, yes, this person can give me all of the bright ideas, sound very articulate, stand there at the podium and sell ice to an Eskimo, But then when they're elected, they do the same BS. I understand that side of the argument. I think that's really the side that wins all of the time, because we have 2022. We have 2 candidates. Forgive me, guys, who do not agree. We have 2 candidates who are not the best speakers. Simply are not the best public speakers.
I agree.
We have a third who's brilliant. I think she would mop the floor with both of them in a debate, but her team is questionable.
I think her team is weak, and her team is the problem. I think, I'm going to go ahead and name her up. Arinthia Kumalafe, I mean, listen, I think she's probably got the best shot right now in terms of a woman at the head of a political party. She may not win or become prime minister, but she can have the greatest impact, I believe. I mean, she's got the platform, and I believe that she's starting to garner a lot of support, and she's getting the people's ears. They're liking what she's saying, and I think she makes some fair points. I mean, even WhatsApp news, even that WhatsApp recording went around when the prime minister made the decision to close lockdown immediately the country. I thought that it showed that she's human. She's not just concerned about the political office or the rewards that come with it. She's also very in tune with what it is that's happening at the lower levels of society, at the grassroots
Jasper?
What's happening?
I think he froze. Maybe you should take it away.
The best time to wear a striped sweater is all.
No, I get what you're saying, Nick. Orinthi Komolafe, she is brilliant. But I think that the issue is the team. You want to see who is behind you, those who are supporting you, those who would eventually form our cabinet. We don't see that as yet. And so just me speaking, you want to see who you would put, whose hands we put our country in.
I think the issue is more so consistency, if you ask me. There was a period of time where I feel like the DNA kind of just went off the radar a bit. And then, the election came, and then they didn't do too well. And then they went back off the radar. They had a change in leadership. And then they kind of just started to come back and get their footing, or whatever it's called, when she became the new leader. And I think that kind of inconsistency, and I'm not saying it's inconsistent in a bad way, but I think that may not sit too good with the voters, because they want to feel that commitment. They want to feel like you're going to kind of always be there, and you're a stable and reliable party that they can depend on.
I think they're more so missing an opportunity as we speak, because people are going through fatigue of both parties, both the two bigger parties. People are going through that, and so they're looking for another option. You have people who are literally fed up with politics as it is now in the Bahamas, and they want another option. And the DNA is they're there, but they're not there. You know what I'm saying, Jasper? And so people really want that option, and if that option
but not really effective right now.
Yes, if that option does not present itself by the time of the next general election, we're going to once again be going through the battle of who has the better rally, who has the better speaker on the podium.
I disagree with you on that, Kyle. I think, and I mean,
really,
yeah, and it's on the basis that I don't really think this election, and this can be my naive. This is only my second election I would have been able to vote in, But I think this election is going to be different, because it's going to be following two historic, crises we've never seen before. It's not going to simply be, I roll with the gold, I roll with the red, I roll with the green. It's going to be like, my mom died from COVID. I was in Abaco during Dorian. I think it's going to be a different type situation, just because of all of the things that would have happened in the last 5 years. I think people may take more time to sit down and consider what is best for the country.
I would love to see that. I would love to see that. But at the same time, you have to give people that option to vote for, though.
It's like now what they're going to have to battle is expectations, because Bahamian people have never had to have this expectation of their government. They've never had we have never had to think, well, damn, what is this government going to do if we have another pandemic, if there's a deadly virus that goes around again? What is going to happen if another hurricane comes? Because, I mean, like the expectation factor, I think, is increased, to the detriment of the government, because now people are really going to be asking more questions, and more difficult questions. It's one of those things. I think right now the DNA is probably in a prime position, because all you have to do, I have this thing where I try not to make everything a gross oversimplification, but all they have to do, in my view, is anything different from what the government or the opposition has done or is doing.
Right. I understand that, and I respect that. But what they also have to do is not just seem like a group of people who don't have it together. Because while people are fed up with both sides of the argument, people also are thinking, they're saying, okay, yeah, I'm upset at Ministry. Yeah, I don't trust Brave that much. But I'm not going to take my country and put it in the hands of somebody who, one, does not know what they're doing. And I think their role now over the next year and a half or so is to show that, listen, we have a capable team who knows what we're doing. Two, we can run this country. And to date, they have not done that, aside from their leader, because she's very intelligent, she speaks very well, and she articulates her thoughts very, very well. But
she's got the wrong team, though.
The team has to be there.
Do you guys see any new political up-and-comers?
Huh?
Do you guys see any new political up-and-comers you're kind of watching? or anybody that you hope jumps on a ticket soon? Like,
Wait, within those parties or just randomly good?
Generally speaking.
I know a few, several, but I'm not sure if they would say run for
No,
politics.
I don't want you to name drop. Just do you see anybody that looks like they want to take the mantle?
Yes, I see within the FNM, the PLP, as well as those who aren't sure what the party is yet, and rightfully so. And I always discourage my friends from joining politics because it is a gutter game here in the Bahamas, and it's unnecessarily dirty, and it discourages the brightest of young minds from getting involved because of the unnecessary drama and backlash it gives to your family, as well as your name. You know what I mean?
Very true.
Yeah, we have a lot of bright young minds who can contribute so greatly to this country, but the immaturity of our electorate, I think, plays a huge role in discouraging people from offering themselves as candidates to serve an office.
I think every successful, every successful government has capitalized in terms of their campaign on a particular thing. So Lyndon Pinling, take it all the way back, would have capitalized on Black people not having the equal rights. And so I will give this to you, and they put their faith in him. Every successive government has had that thing. What do you think is going to be the thing that comforts the people, that makes the people feel I can trust the government again?
You mean this government, right?
Yes.
While we disagree with their current handling of this pandemic, I think the one feather they can stick in their cap is that we ain't dead, that we're all still here. Not all, because some have passed, unfortunately. We've come through, you know? They have not done as bad as some make it seem. Because as bad as some say they did, they're still light years ahead of some previous governments, in my opinion. I think that's the one thing they can hang.
But isn't that more because you're supposed to be ahead of the government before you, rather than they are such a novel, innovative government? I don't want to sound like I'm condemning them. I'm testing the conviction behind the statement.
Right. No, you're right. And there are several campaign promises that they have not fulfilled, but also understanding the situation, the hand they were dealt with, Dorian and COVID. But certain things like free tertiary education, you can't talk bad about that.
Can you take away the pandemic and take away the handling of the hurricane, right? Can you then say that what this government has done through their term is better than? I'm trying to ask the question in as objective fashion as possible. I think you get what I'm trying to say, but I have to articulate it for the purposes of people that can't read minds. If you take away the hurricane and you take away the pandemic, how do you grade this government? Are they A performers, B performers? Are they at the national average? Should they be repeating grade 9? Where do you think that they are? You can answer that, I guess, comparatively or relatively, however you feel.
As a journalist, I'm going to refrain from putting my opinion out there.
Great answer.
I'm going to refrain from putting my opinion out there. I do have my feelings toward it, but I'm going to choose to plead the fifth on this one.
Fair enough. So let me try and attack the question a different way then. If they had handled the pandemic and the hurricane differently, you know what? I'm going to abandon that because that is also going to come out with a little bit of bias. I'm going to leave that question alone. Let me walk away. I'm going to sip my wine right now. Let me walk away from that one.
By the way, did you tell the people that you gave me Jasper Sky Juice?
Jasper did at the beginning. How is it? How you doing?
This is A1 Sky Juice. It is perfect. The bottle is in the freezer. I've just been refilling it every now and again, but it's A1. If you decide to sell it, just let me know.
I might. I doubt it though. I kind of keep that recipe close to my heart. And funny enough, I actually got that from a dude down by the fry. I just tweaked it to my own specifications.
No, but I'll try to answer your question as fairly as possible.
Don't tread in any uncharted territory.
No. Listen, we've already said enough, and political activists are going to come for us in any which way. But it's hard. It's hard. I don't want to give them a grade just yet, because I saw what Peter Turnquist, for example, the Minister of Finance. I saw his plan and the trajectory that he was on to get things done, and then I saw the issues that he ran into. So, so he was doing pretty well. And another thing that I respect about him, he's always willing to explain the decisions that he makes as the Minister of Finance. So I respect that as well. And he's always available to answer. But in terms of grading them, I think it would be unfair to grade them right now.
Why?
No, because we're in a state where, the saying where they say you don't make a decision based off an emotion? Like you don't break up with your girlfriend while you're upset? You know that kind of way? We're in a position now where the country is upset. We're in a serious position. And I don't think it would be fair to say, give them a grading where we're in a position where we want open things up. We want Iraqi vendors to at least operate curbside. You know what I mean? I don't think it's fair for us to say, sit down and level-headedly give them a grading. I think we should wait until probably next year.
Next year?
You're going to have some who say, Kyle, oh, no, you blah, blah, blah.
That doesn't make sense to me. Why would you wait? I don't think that, okay. I don't know what it is that's happening.
I'm on the phone with my editor and this may take some time, so I'll be back.
I just knew it was her because I wrote for the newspaper last week, and I know on Sundays around this time she's calling for clarification on your stories. So I knew exactly who that was.
Yes, you can see that.
Sorry, inside joke, Nick. Sorry, inside joke.
No worries. I forgot what I was going to say just now. Lost my train of thought.
No, you were saying why wait?
Yeah, why wait? I don't think that you can press the pause button on assessing a government. I think if you win the election on August 1st, you can start evaluating what you do from the minute you start doing things. So the pandemic, the hurricane, they've already started doing things. The economy, they started doing things. I'm not saying give them a final grade. I'm saying if you had to give them an an interim grade. What would you give them? Where would you peg them?
And see, then again, you have to take into account their handling of this pandemic, because again, like you mentioned, they started
take it into account then.
They started off doing incredibly well. They, in my opinion, some would disagree, but they handled the beginning of this pandemic very, very well. Things fell apart, I think, a week or two after the borders opened, and it went downhill since there. I stand strongly by my opinion that it wouldn't be fair to give them a grading right now. I can, and I'm not just defending them or anything, but I'm saying, again, I stand by that belief that you do not make a decision when you're upset. Have you been
following many other countries' governments in terms of the handling of the pandemic?
Yes, I have. And even down to New Zealand, who was categorized as probably handling it the best. Their Supreme Court deemed them their recent move unconstitutional.
But before we even get to that, can you grade their handling of the pandemic?
I would stick this in there because I haven't been following them as well. I just know that their cases per capita has been very, very low. Very, very low. And so I think that's how we're judging the handling of this pandemic in terms of countries and how countries handling it.
So if you can't grade the government generally, then grade them specifically. In the handling of the pandemic, where are we? You can give New Zealand a grade, presumably. We're at the same phase. What can you give them? What does Kyle think about that?
Handling of this pandemic? Of this one? somewhere between a C and a D.
Fair. I think that's fair. They got some things right.
I would give them a pass of a C because we have a public healthcare system that's not as strong. You know, it could be better, but it's not gotten to the point where we're collapsing per se. So that's why it's not fair to give them a fail. You know, things are bad and not as good as people would want, but they're not extremely horrible. You know, that's just my opinion. Get her, Nick. She's finally off the phone.
Right. I've been here trying to like refine this question and pin Kyle down to an answer here. So the question started out as how would you grade the government's performance overall? Kyle's answer was that he was going to plead the fifth. He didn't want to make a direct comment or commit to an answer that may sound biased against the government, understandably so. So if you adopt that position, I get it. But it's now been refined to, compared to other countries, based on our government's handling and other governments' handling of the pandemic, how can you grade, or how do you grade the government?
I mean, the Bahamas is a really small country.
So it's the Cayman Islands.
To get information from, and so I'm going to plead the fifth on that because I try to avoid being labeled political. I'm sorry, man.
Well, okay. Let's remove the government from it. Let's assume this is some body of sovereign beings that have.
You already introduced the government into the whole equation. You can't just remove.
I mean, I'm trying to remove it because I managed to get Kyle to give me an answer eventually. I just need to see how I have to run around the loop to get you to commit.
Jasper, he's trying to jam you, and he's trying to question your credibility as a journalist. This answer.
I'm not at all questioning your credibility. I'm
not an editor. I can't give opinion, man.
We need a job at the end of this, Jasper. Just think.
I'm not even a senior reporter. I'm just a staff reporter.
Oh dear. All right. I won't put that pressure on you to commit to an answer. Do you think that the handling is? Are you satisfied with it personally?
More people could have been dead.
That's.
You know. And it sounds bad, but realistically, I mean, we all understand, like we can all accept the fact that, you know, the COVID numbers were probably just as high during the first wave. But we realized it wasn't as bad because the hospitalizations weren't as bad. People weren't randomly showing up for, you know, respiratory issues, and people weren't just falling down dead, you know, between March and June. And from that alone, there weren't a lot of deaths. We could have been 100 deaths already. And I think that should speak for itself. So as long as people aren't dead, I think it's just okay. And I'm not talking about from a policy and a lockdown and that. I'm talking about strictly people surviving, people contracting it, people recovering. More people could have been in way worse situations. And that's not discrediting anyone who's right now suffering with the virus. But we could have had way more cases where we were mourning the losses of more doctors, more nurses, more politicians could have been in it, more journalists, more KFC workers, super value workers, you know? And I think so as long as we acknowledge that we have 29 deaths that are painful and that we should mourn as a country, at least we can say that 1,600 plus people still have their mom, dads, aunts, cousins, grandparents who would have gotten COVID-19 but survived and overcome. And we should be very grateful for that as a country.
Very true. I mean, I take nothing away from the families of those who've lost loved ones to COVID-19. Because I mean, I'll be the first to admit, you know, at first, I didn't take this shit seriously. I was in Budapest at the time when this started to sort of flex all over the world. And I remember thinking, is it that bad? You know, is it going to be that bad? And then all of this stuff happened and I started to get a little nervous. I will admit. I mean, I'm back in my state of calm now. I just also don't want anyone to touch me.
When everything was popping off, I was on a State Department exchange. So I was like DC, Boston, Arizona to Florida. And so I was watching things pop off in the States and getting already concerned. And I remember returning to the Bahamas, and Juan and Candia were like, we got people with kids that work at The Guardian. We don't know if we want you to bring your COVID germs back. And I was like, I don't have COVID.
Fair enough.
You know, but it's hard to grade, but Jesus, our editor is calling me back.
That's how it is, Nick. When you write, put it on mute, Jasper. That's how it is. Just to be sure that the story is accurate and things are correct. You get called a million times while she's editing the story. But
no, that's fine. And I mean, I know who's on the other end of that phone call, so I appreciate it. I appreciate the thoroughness that is involved in what's happening right now.
But you have to respect the position that we're in. You know, you don't want to be putting your opinion out there because every journalist has an opinion. But
no, I know, but I deliberately ask those questions just to test that, because I know that there are things that you both can say and can't say. But I wanted to push the envelope a little bit and just check where your thoughts are.
So
no worries,
you're clearly going to pay us if we lose our jobs.
I mean, I'll hire you. What y'all think? We could do some investigative journalism on the level of like the girl with the dragon tattoo kind of vibe. Just, I mean,
every time I go out, I come back in the middle of a very weird conversation.
Stop leaving.
Well, when the person who pays my salary calls.
You better go. Answer that call. Quick. I hope she watches this, as a matter of fact.
Oh, please don't.
Well, I don't have any more real questions. If there's anything else you guys want to tag in, anything you want to say, feel free, freestyle it, get it out your system. Any thoughts, anything you want to tell the people?
Quick shout out to all of the other reporters. Oh my gosh, she's sending me voice notes. Quick shout out to all the other reporters from Eyewitness News. That's all the Sloan, Royce, the neighbor those. To the Tribune, you know, my best friend Rashad those. To JCN and ZNS, you know, like people. Everywhere I go, I rep The Guardian. It's just my personality. I rep Zeta Phi Beta because it's the best. And clearly I rep The Guardian because it's the best. Like, it's just who I am. You know, I only operate with the best. And so, you know, when we go around.
That's why you're here now.
There we go. And so when we're around other, like our colleagues, you know, sometimes it's a bit of banter where we're like, oh, we're better. We get better stories. And Eyewitness reporters like, we're always a headline ahead. Most of the time it's just fun. Sometimes it gets kind of deep, but most of the time it's just fun. And for the most part, like you'll be on Twitter and you'll see people comparing like Kyle to like another reporter or Eyewitness to The Guardian and ZNS, and I'm like, please don't do that because
we don't care. Like we don't. I don't care.
to tremendous sacrifices to our own social lives and personal lives, and we're doing it to ensure that, you know, the Bahamian public has the most factual, accurate, and unbiased information that they need to make decisions necessary about the country and about their own lives. And so I like to encourage whoever's watching this podcast to be nice to all of the journalists and to take all of their information and respect them all, because trust that we don't sleep much and we all deserve some love.
And if you see it, just give us a free bottle of wine because we, right, Jasper? We need it. But no, like Jasper said, we're all friends. Well, most of us. One of my closest friends in the world works for ZNS, my frat brother. And, you know, I have good friends at Eyewitness, good friends at the Tribune. Jasper's my good dog at The Guardian, obviously. But, you know, we're all friends, you know what I mean? Some you may not be a fan of, obviously. And their style of journalism may be different, but you have to respect that we're all in the same field. Our duty is to just inform the people as accurately as possible without throwing your bias in there. So, you know, we're all good. My good folks at Eyewitness, Theo, Sani, you know, and of course my good Guardian family, Jasmine, Jasper, Giorgio.
Oh, you're Long Island.
Rachel, listen, me and Rachel knew each other from growing up, so you know.
Y'all Long Island people clannish back.
Yeah.
Listen, I walked into the
newsroom. Long Island, Kyle.
I walked into the newsroom. The three Long Island birds: Rachel, Travis, and Kyle.
Yep.
We just from the Long Island corner.
I like that. Three Long Island birds.
You know, like shameless plug. I think we have the best team in the Guardian. Cable, the Our News Guardian team is the best, but, others would disagree, but that's fine.
I plead the fifth.
Wow.
Look at him. Tables up turn.
Wow, Jasper, at the end of the conversation.
Right?
Oh, I'm just kidding. I want to just say thanks for being on the podcast. It was really good talking to both of you. I think what you do is nothing short of incredible. You do good work. You report the facts, report the news, keep the fire under these. I was going to use a bad word, but I'll try to keep it 100. Keep the fire under these politicians and these people. And I mean, as far as the voices of our generation, we kind of look up to both of you to do just that. So keep doing the good work, and thanks for having and chatting, Cheers, guys.
Muddafork.
Well, Muddafork.
I'm going to say that.
Cool. Take it easy. Be safe.
Thanks for having us, buddy.